them. They sound familiar.
Well, I guess the big question is, will people in Philadelphia not be hearing about these two guys by the end of the week? Let's start with Hamels. It seems like there's more teams than the last time we talked. How realistic are some of these teams? We had, I guess, 4 last week when you were on Friday. It seems like it's gone up.
Well, what I said on Friday were that those 4 teams were the favorites.
Right.
I think what has gone on since we talked, Mike, is that the Phillies have been trying to draw a bunch of teams on the periphery into the conversation, which to me is an indication they haven't gotten the return they hoped they would get from the Dodgers, the Rangers, the Cubs, and to a lesser extent the Red Sox. So we know they've talked to the Giants, we know they've talked to the Astros, know they've talked to the Yankees, know they've even talked to the Diamondbacks, and I still think ultimately this comes down to Texas and the Dodgers primarily. The Astros thing is interesting. Now, apparently, from what I gather, this welled up over the weekend in Cooperstown. The Astros had a large delegation. The Phillies had a delegation there led by Pat Gillick, and that got that conversation rolling. What's interesting is Cole Hamels has a contract that allows him to block a trade to Houston. And my understanding is the Astros were told a long time ago that he's not going there. He would not approve a trade to go there, and there really hadn't been any indication since that he has changed his mind. And yet, I'm certain the Phillies knew that too, and yet the Phillies engaged the Astros, hoping maybe they could change Cole's mind. I don't know. No way to know, but I doubt it. The Giants are interesting because they're trying to find a starting pitcher who could slot behind Madison Bumgarner in Game 2 of a postseason series and somebody they'd control, and Cole obviously fits that definition, but I've never gotten the sense that those two teams match up. The Yankees, they have some big-time young players, but never shown any interest in giving them up. So those teams have been talking, but I think there's a big difference between talking and saying that there's a likelihood of a deal. I mean, the best deals out there are still Rangers and Dodgers, best I can tell.
Jay, before we move on to some other things, if Cole Hamels if the deal between the Astros and the Phillies gets, agreed upon, and Hamels says no, what will the reaction of the fans be if Hamels declines a trade? Do you think he will have a negative feel amongst the fan base?
Well, if that happens, then he doesn't get traded at all? Is that what you're saying?
Right. If he ends up here and the Astros let's say the Astros is the only deal the Phillies actually like, and they say, yep, we want to do that deal, and he says, nope, I'm not going there, and they say, you know what, I don't like any of the other deals, we're going to keep them.
I think a lot of it depends on how it's spun. All right, if Ruben walks into the press conference at 4:05 p.m. on Friday after the deadline and says, we had a deal for Cole, he wouldn't go, and makes Cole the bad guy, that's not a good spot for any player to be in. But it's the Phillies who gave him the no trade, right? He can veto trades 20 teams.
Wow.
And so, if you wanted to have more control, you got to give the player less control. And so they've known for a long time that he wouldn't go there, from what I gather. And if you go ahead and make a deal with a team when you know that going in, it's not all on the player. So we'll have to see how this unfolds, won't we? It's really you bring up a fascinating plot line, one that's not impossible, by the way. It really is possible that they won't like the other deals out there, but they're pressing to make a deal. They've told several teams that I've talked to that they want their best offer in the next 24 hours so they can make a decision. So that tells us something.
Yeah, I was going to get to that as you reported that they want their best offers by Wednesday. Hamels is scheduled to start on Thursday. So is this so the Phillies can kind of look everything over and maybe scratch him by Thursday? Would he be, if he's traded, would it be before Friday?
It really is surprising to me that they scheduled him to pitch on Thursday. But maybe it is a way of forcing the action, right? It's to force the teams trying to trade for him to make that deal fast if they want to keep him from going to the mound so that his next start is for them, not the Phillies. That seems to be the strategy here. It could always change, but it could backfire, right? If he takes the mound Thursday night, that's a sign he's not getting traded because they don't like the offers. That's how I would view it.
Jayson Stark, ESPN.com, senior baseball writer. Right now, you said, I heard Mike and Mike, I think you said 75%. That still stands as I know the day has changed a lot since this morning.
You know, I'm probably a little more than 75% now. I'm probably at least 85%, but I'm not at 100. I really just got off the phone a little while ago with someone who told me he would not be surprised still if it all falls through. So I'm not sure exactly how to take that, but you have all this circumstantial evidence that suggests that the Phillies aren't totally happy with the best offers they've gotten so far, and that's not a good place to be when it's July 28th, man.
We spoke Friday, and it sounded like the door or the window was closed on Papelbon. Has that changed in the last couple days?
It has. And, you know, the Nationals were out there trying to trade for Craig Kimbrell, and that doesn't look like that's happening. They were out trying to trade for Aroldis Chapman. That doesn't look like that's happening. And so they have turned their attention to Jonathan Papelbon, and I just tweeted about this. There's a story that's going to be on our site shortly that says that deal is likely to happen, but it's not done. I was told there are a number of hurdles here that could still get in the way. It's pretty easy to see what some of them are. Papelbon, again, has a no trade where he can veto a deal to the Nationals. So he's got a $13 million vesting option, going to want that guaranteed. All right, if it's guaranteed, who's paying for it? Phillies and Nationals got to work that out, and that's been a big obstacle, as you know, all along. I think the biggest issue of all is one that kind of steered me away from this happening days ago, which is the Nationals and the fact that they have a closer in Drew Storen. You know, we've heard Jonathan Papelbon say a million times he's only going somewhere to close, not approving any deal where he's not the closer. Well, the Nationals, I mean, I had viewed him as a guy who might share that role with Drew Storen. Not happening. Certainly not going to go there and set up for Drew Storen. And then, you know, you got a problem that creates that both teams have to grapple with, especially Washington. You know, if Drew Storen could understand why the Nationals were trading for Craig Kimbrell, he could understand why the Nationals would be trading for Aroldis Chapman. He's had a great year. You'd have a hard time convincing him he hasn't had a better year than Jonathan Papelbon. He needs to go back to setting up, I think. And, I mean, he's been there from the beginning. He's been a National from day one. He was number one pick the same year as Strasburg. They had 2 picks in the top 10. And there's a ripple effect in that clubhouse if you bring in Jonathan Papelbon and depose a guy who's done a great job. So all that stuff's got to be worked through.
Yeah, and obviously I was going to ask you that. Is Storen going to want to become the setup man? If the Nationals say, we'll pick up the $13 million, does Papelbon change his tune?
Just for the money?
Yeah, if they say, we'll guarantee that second year, you don't have to worry, we'll bring you back next year, $13 million if you set up. Does he want to get out of Philly that bad?
Are you familiar with Papelbon's work? Yeah, he wants out, but he wants it all. I mean, he thinks he's one of the best closers of his era. He's right. He's right. He leads 2 storied franchises in saves, right, in his career, Phillies and Red Sox. And if you think he can be a problem if he's not happy, what do you think, Mike?
Slightly. I think he might have a little bit of it. But he could be but does he really want to sit through this? It's like, you know, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Well, I'll take you, I'm damned if I don't there rather than here.
You might think so. But I think I don't know, I don't think they've got anything else, but my prediction is that if this doesn't happen in July, they'll go right back at it in August. And maybe not to Washington, but see if somebody claims them and take it from there. There's a lot. They haven't given up, I'm sure, but again, I think this is likely to happen, but it's a powder keg for the Nationals in a lot of ways.
Blue Jays last night got Tulowitzki. Do the Yankees have to counter? Would Hamels be on their radar now because Tulo goes there?
They would love to trade for Cole Hamels, but you know, if you think the Phillies think they're giving up Aaron Judge or Luis Severino or anybody in that ilk, not happening. Right? The Yankees right now are looking to do what they did last year, position themselves to start taking on other teams' salary dumps without giving up much. And they're in a great spot in their division. They're going to win their division. So, where's the sense of urgency for them to answer a team like Toronto that already scored a lot of runs and needed pitching, and is 6.5 games behind them, right, or 7 games behind them? I just don't see where they would feel a need to respond to that deal. The Yankees are going to do what the Yankees do best: take your money.
By the way, Todd Zalecki just tweeted, Cole Hamels will not pitch Thursday. He is scheduled for Friday, and that would be after the deadline. The Phillies do not want to risk it, so they have now changed that. That was 5 minutes ago. So Hamels not Thursday now.
And again, that made no sense. That was shocking to me that they had him penciled in for Thursday. They had an off day, didn't need to pitch him Thursday. By Friday, he'll know, we'll know, and all these other teams will know what his status is. That's exactly the way they should play this.
And as it said, we'll let Jay run here. I know you got a lot of calls and stuff to make. Papelbon, a lot of people said he will be traded by Friday. Is it Nationals or no one, or is there other teams lingering just waiting to see what happens here?
I don't think there's any other market, not that I've discerned. And, I mean, the fact that they were convinced 2 days ago that they could not get him traded, and then the Nationals roared into this picture, tells us they're the team.
All right, Jayson Stark, ESPN.com, senior baseball writer, of course, usually on Fridays, but I was kind enough to take off.
I will not be able to take off on Friday. I'll be a little busy.
But he was kind enough to jump on today, brought to you by Team Nissan on the spot with a checkered flag drops, Delsey Drive in Violent. Thank you, Jay. Happy trade deadline to you Friday.
Thanks, Mike. Have a good weekend, man. Long weekend.
Yeah, you do the same. I know yours will be busier than mine. That's Jayson Stark, everybody.